A brilliant streak of blue light tore through the pitch-black sky of Xylos, hurtling straight toward the clamorous slave market like a deadly arrow. Shouts, the clatter of chains, and the merchants' hawking voices echoed through the air, but all were drowned out by a deafening explosion. Dust billowed into a choking haze, concealing the eerie green flames erupting from the rubble. Kalen, an elite warrior of the Valorian people, landed amid the wreckage, his silver-gray battle armor glinting under the ghostly moonlight. He gripped his blazing plasma sword and swept a cold gaze over the panicked slaves. He did not belong here, in this brutal market where living beings were treated as merchandise. He had come for only one reason: to settle a debt. This world, Xylos, lay on the edge of the galaxy, a barren planet of endless deserts and cramped underground cities. Its technology was devoted to warfare and resource extraction, with colossal war machines and yawning ore mines. Society was starkly divided between the wealthy rulers and the wretched slaves, whose exploitation ran bone deep. Kalen had grown up in another realm, a realm of free warriors under vast starlit skies. His Valorian kin were famed for their courage, extraordinary strength, and profound sense of duty. They stood ready to defend the weak, no matter how formidable the foe. Since boyhood, Kalen had dreamed of exploring the cosmos, fighting for justice, and finding someone to share his life. But fate had drawn him to Xylos, to this slave market, on a clandestine mission. He had received an encrypted message, a plea for help from an old friend, warning of a dark conspiracy involving a weapon capable of threatening the entire galaxy. The sole clue had led him here, among these suffering people. Kalen knew time was running out. If he failed, that weapon could fall into the wrong hands, endangering billions of lives. Yet amid this perilous quest, something else seized his attention. A fleeting image among the throng of captives, a young woman with jade-green skin and large, proud, sorrow-filled eyes. She stood apart from the other slaves. Though chained and caked in mud, she retained a noble beauty and a fierce dignity. Kalen felt an unfamiliar stirring, a compulsion he had never known before. He wanted to free her, not just from her physical bonds but from the wounds in her soul. But there was no time to hesitate. A piercing alarm blared, sharp, relentless, announcing the arrival of the slave traders, Xylos's ruthless jailers. They came to collect their cargo, to consign these wretched souls to an even darker fate. Kalen tightened his grip on his sword, his eyes blazing. He knew he must act, and act at once. He would shatter every chain, not only for the jade-skinned girl, but for all those imprisoned here. He would uncover the truth behind the shadowy conspiracy and protect what he held most dear, regardless of the cost. But first, he had to face those bearing whips and shackles, those intent on snuffing out the last ember of hope. The battle had begun, and Kalen, the Valorian warrior, would not back down. The alarm siren ripped through the night, but Kalen stood unmoved. 3 Zargonian dropships plummeted from above, their colossal silhouettes blotting out the moon. From their bellies, squads of troops poured out, clad in heavy weapons and glossy black armor. They roared, their marching feet thunderous across the market, snuffing out every last flicker of hope. Kalen knew this was no ordinary skirmish. It was a deliberate assault: seize as many slaves as possible and annihilate anyone in their path. He glanced at the jade-skinned girl, Alara, still trembling amid the wreckage. He couldn't let them capture her. "Stay here," Kalen ordered in a low, resolute voice. "I'll return." Without another word, he charged into the Zargonian ranks, his plasma sword whipping through the air like a whirlwind. Its blazing blade tore through armor and flesh alike, leaving streaks of searing blue light. Zargonian soldiers collapsed like marionettes with their strings cut, their black armor melting, their flesh charred. Kalen's speed and power far outmatched his foes. He moved like a relentless phantom, unstoppable, unbeatable. Each blow he struck was a death sentence, each step he took a declaration of war. But the Zargonian numbers were endless, flooding around him like a tidal wave, closing him off on every side. He knew he couldn't hold them back forever. He needed a way to free the slaves and escape. Suddenly, a thunderous explosion shattered the air. One of the Zargonian ships blew apart, metal fragments raining down. Kalen paused, startled, and looked up. On the roof of a shattered building stood a lone figure, clutching a makeshift grenade launcher. It was a young woman, her long black hair streaming behind her, and her eyes blazing with determination. She wasn't Lumina, and she wasn't at Siloson. She was an alien like Kalen, and she was fighting the Zargonians. "Follow me," she shouted, her voice rough but fierce. "I know an exit." Kalen hesitated for only a heartbeat, then trusted her, and he had no other choice. He followed as she fought her way through, carving a path of scorched bodies behind them. They reached a narrow, shadowed alley. The woman led him across piles of rubble and tangled pipes. Kalen realized this was one of the secret tunnels Silos's people used to flee Zargonian oppression. "Who are you?" Kalen panted. "Jax," she replied without turning. "I'm free." They ran deeper into the tunnel, the sounds of gunfire and screams fading behind them. Kalen felt a spark of hope. He had found an ally, someone who could help him complete his mission and rescue the innocent. But he also knew this was only the beginning. The first challenge lay behind them, and countless trials waited ahead. He had shattered the initial balance and stepped out of his comfort zone. Now he must face the consequences. They arrived at a massive metal door guarded by two hulking Zargonian soldiers. Jax paused and glanced at Kalen. "This is the exit," she said, "but we have to get past them." Kalen looked at the guards, then back at Jax. He understood the urgency. They could fight their way through and escape, or they could be caught and share the slave's fate. He tightened his grip on his sword, his gaze unwavering. He would not back down. He would fight to the end, for freedom, for justice, and for those he held dear. At the end of the tunnel, Jack stopped before a reinforced steel door and quickly entered a code into the control panel. It slid open to reveal a small chamber, a makeshift communications hub, with a flickering screen and a handful of outdated devices. "This is how I contact the resistance network," Jax explained. "We can call for help, but we must hurry. The Zargonians could find us at any moment." Kalen nodded and scanned the room. He spotted a holographic map marked with a red zone. "What is that?" he asked. "That's the Zargonian main prison," Jax replied. "They hold most captives there, including the green-skinned girl you saved." Rage surged through Kalen. He couldn't believe such cruelty existed. He was determined to free all those imprisoned, but he knew the mission would be perilous. "We need a plan," Kalen said. "We can't storm in unprepared." Jax agreed. "I have friends who can help, but we must contact them first." She began typing at the console to establish a link with the resistance. Kalen stood guard by the door, aware that time was running out. While Jax worked, Kalen asked about her past. He wanted to know more about this mysterious woman who'd saved him. Jax revealed she was a starfarer like Kalen. She'd witnessed many worlds overrun and vowed to fight the Zargonians. She'd been on Silos for months, aiding the local resistance to help the oppressed. Kalen admired Jax's courage and dedication. He felt a deep respect for her and believed they could become true allies. They shared a common goal, a hatred of Zargonian brutality and a burning desire to protect the innocent. "Why are you here?" Kalen asked. "Why risk your life for these people?" Jax met his gaze with sorrowful eyes. "I lost my family to the Zargonians," she said. "I know what it's like to lose everything. I can't stand by and watch others suffer." Kalen understood her pain. He too had lost loved ones in war. He knew revenge wasn't the answer, but sometimes you had to fight to protect what mattered most. "I'm here for a similar reason," Kalen said. "I have a mission, but I can't ignore those in need." Jax offered a rare, genuine smile. "Then we share a cause," she said. "We'll fight together." At last Jax completed the connection and sent an urgent distress signal, requesting reinforcements for the prison assault. Within moments, she received confirmation. Help would arrive in a few hours. We have some time, Jax said, but we can't waste it. We must prepare. Kalen nodded, aware they were racing the clock. They needed swift, decisive action if they were to rescue the prisoners and thwart the Zargonian plot. Together, they began crafting a detailed plan, leveraging Jax's intel on the prison's layout and Kalen's combat experience. As they strategized, Kalen couldn't stop thinking about Alara, the jade-skinned girl he'd rescued. He wondered if she was safe, and if he would ever see her again. He felt an overwhelming urge to protect her, and vowed not to let harm come to her. He sensed she held a crucial role in his mission. Kalen's journey on Silos had plunged him into a world of violence and oppression, but it had also given him hope and friendship. He'd found a new purpose, a reason to fight, and a trusted comrade in Jax. Yet he knew the road ahead was fraught with danger. The Zargonians were formidable opponents who would not relent. Kalen and Jax would face daunting trials and risk everything to succeed. They understood that failure was not an option. The fate of thousands rested in their hands. But Kalen was unafraid. He was a Valorian warrior, trained to confront any peril. He possessed the strength, courage, and resolve to overcome all obstacles, and he had Jax by his side, fighting with him until the end. They had sworn to protect each other, and those they'd pledged to save. With hope and determination in his heart, Kalen stood ready for whatever lay ahead. He would fight for freedom, for justice, and for those he cherished, and he would not rest until his mission was complete, and those responsible for this suffering were brought to justice. Kalen and Jax quickly drew up their assault plan for the Zargonian prison. Using Jax's scant intelligence and the holographic map, they pinpointed the prisoners' holding cells, defense emplacements, and guard numbers. But their first obstacle emerged immediately. They needed better weapons and gear. "We can't storm in armed only with a plasma sword and a makeshift grenade launcher," Jax said, worry creasing her brow. "They've got energy rifles, EMP grenades, even heavy mechs." Kalen nodded in agreement. They resolved to raid a nearby Zargonian arms depot, a perilous but necessary mission. Slipping past tight security, they incapacitated the guards silently and began transferring arms. But just as they loaded the last crates, alarms blared. They'd been spotted. A fierce firefight erupted. Kalen and Jax fought valiantly, leveraging their speed and skill against overwhelming odds. Kalen adapted rapidly to the energy rifle, while Jax demonstrated deadly precision with her venom-tipped daggers. Yet the depot's defenders outnumbered them. They escaped under a hail of laser fire, but not without cost. Jax took a leg wound, slowing her pace drastically. Guilt and fear twisted in Kalen's chest. He had dragged her into this, and now she paid the price. "We have to stop," Jax panted, leaning against a ruined wall. "I can't go on." Kalen's heart twisted. Should he abandon the mission to carry Jax to safety, or press onward, risking that she might never heal? Then they learned a crucial piece of intelligence from a captured Zargonian soldier. The prison didn't merely incarcerate slaves. It also housed a prototype of the secret weapon Kalen's friend had warned him about. Their two objectives, freeing the slaves and stopping the weapon, were one and the same, with urgency. Spiking, Kalen made his decision. He would not leave Jax behind. "I'm taking you with me," he said, hoisting her onto his back. "We'll finish this together." She tried to protest, but Kalen was unyielding. Shouldering her weight, he pressed on over treacherous terrain and past patrolling squads. The burden slowed him, yet gave him renewed purpose. He now fought not only for himself, but for Jax and all the innocent lives at stake. They reached an abandoned settlement where Jax knew of a healer, a mysterious old matriarch versed in alien medicine. The healer bound Jax's wound, warning them of an even greater obstacle. "The prison is shielded by an energy barrier," the healer said gravely. "No weapon can penetrate it, not even the mightiest you've seized." A cold dread settled over Kalen and Jax. They had overcome so much already, only to face what seemed an impenetrable defense. They needed to disable the shield. But how? In desperation, they discovered an old Zargonian scientist journal. Within its pages lay the secret. The shield could be disrupted by a precise frequency. To generate that frequency, however, they would need to infiltrate the prison's central computer. It was a near-suicidal plan. The central network was locked down tight, virtually impossible to breach, but they had no choice. They had to try. They resolved to sneak into the prison, crack the system, and shut down the shield. They knew they were storming into the lion's den, with little hope of returning. Yet they were willing to risk everything to save the captives and avert catastrophe. As they prepared to move, Kellen looked at Jax and saw unwavering resolve in her eyes. He sensed, too, a bond deeper than friendship. "We can do this," Kellen said, squeezing her hand. "Together." "Together," Jax echoed, offering a rare, determined smile. They approached the prison's perimeter, feeling the oppressive presence of their enemy. Towering walls bristled with turrets and ceaseless patrol circuits. Tension thickened the air. "This is it," Jax whispered. "Thousands suffer within, and the prototype weapon rests inside." Kellen's chest tightened. He inhaled deeply, steeling himself. "We must breach these walls," he said, "and do so without alerting them." Jax nodded. "I have a few ideas," she said, "but we must move swiftly and silently." They skirted the prison's circumference, evading patrols by slipping into shadow and using hit-and-run tactics. Kellen sliced through electrified barriers with his plasma blade, while Jax disabled security cameras with improvised hacks. At last they found a narrow maintenance tunnel at the rear wall, a crawl space once used for repairs and ventilation. Dim and claustrophobic, it was their only ingress. "We go through here," Kellen said. "Stay alert, who knows what awaits inside." Crawling through the dank, fetid shaft, they could smell decay and despair. Kellen's instinct urged him to retreat, but he pressed on, driven by the lives relying on him. After an arduous crawl, they emerged into a vast, grimy chamber, the prison's waste processing sector, where prisoners toiled under brutal conditions. Horrified, they witnessed slave labor at its worst, fueling their resolve to bring the guards to justice. "We can't linger," Jax urged. "The main network is upstairs." They navigated the fetid corridors, encountering small squads of guards. Kellen's blade sang as he cleared a path. Jax led them through hidden back passages. Finally, they reached a large metal door secured by a complex keypad. Jax's hacking attempts failed to override the code. They needed another way in. Footsteps approached. Hidden among debris, Kellen and Jax watched a guard detail walk by. Their increasing security around the terminal. One guard grumbled. "Intel says someone's trying to hack it." They knew time was slipping away. When the patrol passed, Kellen and Jax sprang from cover, knocking the guards out swiftly and silently. Jax stripped a security badge from a fallen guard and slid it through the keypad. Doors hissed open. Relieved but wary, they entered a brightly lit operations room bristling with consoles, the prison's central computer hub and the heart of its defenses. Here lay the controllers for the energy shield, and the key to its undoing. "We need the main console," Jax said, scanning the room. They edged around clusters of terminals, mindful that any alarm could summon overwhelming reinforcements. Eventually they found it, a sprawling console array with dozens of screens and controls. Jax plugged in her interface tool and began searching for the shield's frequency settings. Kellen stood guard, eyes flicking to the doorway. An uneasy feeling crept over him. He sensed they'd walked into a trap. Suddenly, lights flickered, and a cold, mechanical voice echoed through the internal comm system. "Welcome to the control center. We've been expecting you." Horror clenched their hearts. The Zargonians had anticipated their move and lured them in. The rear door slammed shut with a metallic bang. The energy shield hummed as it reactivated, trapping Kellen and Jax inside. They realized with dread their enemy was stronger than they'd dared imagine, and now they would have to fight their greatest battle yet. The room shook violently as streaks of blue energy hissed from the surrounding shield. Kellen gripped his plasma sword, bracing for the final battle. Jax retreated toward the console, desperately trying to disable the barrier, but in vain. "It's no use," she shouted. "I can't break it." The cold voice echoed again, louder and clearer. "You have gone too far. Now you must pay." From the shadows, a towering figure emerged. A Zergonian, but unlike any god they had faced before. He wore glossy black armor, bore strange weapons, and his eyes burned with ruthless fury. He was the prison's commandant, responsible for all the suffering and death within these walls. "You dare defy me," he thundered, contempt dripping from his voice. "You think you can defeat me? I will show you true power." He raised his hand, and the room crackled with energy. Terminals around them began to explode, sparks flying everywhere. Kellen and Jax dodged the debris, scrambling for cover. "We can't beat him," Jax whispered, her voice trembling. "He's too strong." Kellen met her gaze with unwavering resolve. He knew they were desperate, but he refused to give up. He had come to rescue the innocent and stop the doomsday weapon, and he would not be stopped. "We have to try," Kellen said. "We have to find a way." He lunged at the Zergonian, his plasma sword whirling in a deadly arc. The commandant easily parried and countered with a blast of energy that sent Kellen crashing into the wall. "Kellen," Jax cried, rushing to his side. "I'm fine," Kellen gasped, pushing himself up. "But we need a plan." He scanned the room, searching for anything that might help. His eyes fell on a large power conduit running along the ceiling. That could be the shield's weak point. "Jax," Kellen called, "can you hit that conduit?" Jax looked up and nodded. "I can try," she said, "but we've got one shot." Kellen turned back to face the commandant, determined to draw his fire. This might be his final stand. He remembered his promises, the lives he had sworn to protect. He could not fail. "Power," Kellen bellowed. "I'll show you real power." He charged again, pouring every ounce of skill and fury into his strikes, but the commandant remained dominant, his blows brutal and unrelenting. Meanwhile, Jax slipped into position, grenade launcher trained on the conduit. She took a deep breath, steadying her aim. Kellen was knocked to the floor, the commandant raising his hand for the killing blow. At that moment, Jax fired. The energy grenade soared and struck the conduit with a thunderous roar. The chamber shook as the shield surged, then collapsed in a flash. The commandant howled in agony and rage as his power vanished. Seizing the moment, Kellen rose and launched a final decisive slash. His blade pierced armor and flesh, ending the commandant's reign with one swift stroke. Breathing heavily, Kellen and Jax stood victorious yet exhausted. The shield was down, but they knew this was only a temporary triumph. Thousands still languished within these cells, and those they freed needed guiding to safety. "We have to free them," Kellen said. "We can't abandon them." Jax nodded, and together they unlocked cell after cell, ushering the prisoners out into the night. It was slow and perilous work, but they persevered, knowing it was the right thing to do. Outside the walls, the freed captives gathered around Kellen and Jax, their eyes shining with gratitude and hope. They had been saved and given a chance to rebuild their lives. Yet Kellen and Jax knew their battle was far from over. They had stopped the doomsday weapon here, but the mastermind remained at large. "We must press on," Kellen declared. "We need to find whoever ordered this assault, and stop them before they unleash more misery." Jax agreed. They had come too far to quit now. They would continue fighting until true justice prevailed. As they prepared to depart, Kellen received a shocking message from his friend, the one who had warned him of the weapon. He had traced the mastermind to a distant planet, where a major strike was being readied. Kellen and Jax exchanged a grim glance. They knew they had to stop this threat, but how could they reach that distant world? Their strength was spent, and they lacked a ship. At that moment,
Elara, the jade-skinned girl Kellen had first rescued, stepped forward. "There is someone," she said, "someone who can take you there, but he lives in hiding, and he's not easy to find." Hope flickered in Kellen's heart. They would seize this chance, no matter the danger. They had come too far to falter now. "We will go," Kellen said. "Lead us to him." Elara nodded, and the three of them set off into the cosmos's depths, embarking on a new journey. They did not know what lay ahead, but they vowed never to surrender. They would fight on until light triumphed over darkness.
The voyage to the distant planet unfolded under extreme tension. With help from other Lumina allies, Elara located an old but still operational starship. Together they departed, leaving behind the shattered Zargonian prison and the slaves they had freed. The prison's destruction sent shockwaves across the galaxy. The once mighty Zargonian Empire, already weakened by scattered uprisings, now faced full-scale crisis. Oppressed worlds began to rise up and reclaim their freedom. News of Kalen and Jax, who had dared to stand against tyranny, spread like wildfire, becoming symbols of hope and resistance. Yet there was no time for celebration. The true architect of this horror still lurked in the shadows, preparing a far more devastating strike. Kalen and Jax knew they had to stop him before it was too late. During the voyage, they had moments to reflect on all they'd endured. Kalen thought back to his first meeting with Lyra, her gentle wisdom, and the promise he'd failed to keep, and wondered if she still lived, and whether he would ever see her again. Jax remembered the Zargonians' brutality, her own family's death, and the despair she'd witnessed on countless worlds. She had learned that even in the darkest times hope could endure, and that a single person could make a difference. When they arrived at the target planet, a massive Zargonian army was already assembling for a full-scale assault. At its center stood Thrax, a savage, cunning Zargonian commander, overseeing every preparation. The ensuing battle was fierce. Kalen and Jax fought with the Lumina and fellow starfarers they'd rallied en route. They employed every skill and tactic they'd acquired, yet they were still vastly outnumbered. At the critical moment, Kalen faced Thrax himself. Thrax was stronger than anyone Kalen had ever faced, willing to resort to underhanded tactics without hesitation. Kalen suffered grievous wounds but refused to yield, knowing the fate of billions hung in the balance. With a roar of pain and determination, Kalen unleashed a final massive strike, channeling all his will and power through his plasma sword. A blinding burst of energy tore through Thrax's defenses, shattering him. With their commander fallen, the Zargonian ranks collapsed. The battle had ended, but victory came at a steep cost. Many had fallen, including friends Kalen and Jax had made along their journey. Kalen mourned deeply, but also felt pride in what they'd achieved, rising against tyranny and igniting hope in a desperate galaxy. In the aftermath, Kalen and Jax remained on that world to help rebuild. They worked alongside locals, sharing knowledge and technology to establish a just, peaceful society. Eventually, Kalen found Lyra, alive and now a Lumina leader guiding her people out of darkness. Their reunion was deeply emotional, and they vowed never to part again. Jax resolved to continue her odyssey among the stars, aiding those in need wherever she went. She had learned that even flawed beings could possess extraordinary courage, compassion, and resilience. She would carry that message across the galaxy, inspiring others to rise against oppression. The tale of Kalen and Jax became legend, a testament to the power of the human spirit. It proved that even against insurmountable odds, hope endures, and one person can spark real change. It was the essence of humanity, fuck yeah, a celebration of humanity's limitless potential. Though their story reached its close, their legacy endured. They left the galaxy better than they found it, and inspired a new generation to defend freedom and justice. The future remained uncertain, but one thing was sure: the light of hope would never be extinguished. As the planet healed, Kalen and Lyra honored the fallen, building a monument inscribed with every name lost in that final battle, a permanent reminder of the price of liberty and the necessity of resistance. They also founded an academy where beings from across the galaxy could study peace, justice, and intercivilizational understanding. The academy became a beacon of hope, drawing scholars, warriors, and leaders dedicated to a brighter future. Meanwhile, Jax continued exploring new worlds, forging diplomatic bonds and championing cooperation among diverse species. She established a network of activists tackling galactic challenges, climate change, poverty, and inequality, demonstrating that one person really can make a difference. Under the influence of their deeds, the galaxy experienced a cultural renaissance, an era of enlightenment marked by flourishing civilizations, vibrant interstellar trade, and a shared commitment to empathy and collaboration. Old divides fell away, replaced by unity of purpose. One day, Kaylin and Lyra received word from Jax. She'd discovered an untouched paradise world, a place where all beings could live in harmony. She invited them to join her. After careful thought, Kaylin and Lyra accepted. When they arrived, they were awestruck by its beauty: lush forests, crystal rivers, soaring mountains, and most remarkably, its diverse inhabitants living together in peace. They made their home there, fostering a thriving community, rooted in mutual respect and understanding. From this foundation of hope, they continued their work for peace and justice, now from a place of abundance rather than despair. Thus, the story of Kaylin and Jax did not end, but became a new beginning, a path toward a brighter future for the galaxy. Their legacy, more than a legend of courage and sacrifice, remains an enduring call to action. Humanity, in all its diversity and resilience, can achieve greatness when united by a shared purpose. In the years that followed, Kaylin and Lyra served as revered mentors, sharing their wisdom with emerging leaders and emphasizing empathy, understanding, and cooperation as the cornerstones of a just society. Their teachings shaped policies and initiatives across the galaxy. Their academy grew into a renowned center of learning and innovation, attracting students from every star system. Its programs, from science and technology to arts and humanities, aimed to foster peace, justice, and sustainable development. It became an incubator for future leaders, equipped to build a better world. Meanwhile, Jax's travels brought her into contact with countless civilizations. As a respected diplomat and ambassador, she promoted understanding and alliance among species. She founded an activist network tackling everything from environmental crises to social inequality, showing that one individual can ignite profound change. As the galaxy entered an era of peace and prosperity, the legacy of Kaylin, Lyra, and Jax shone like a beacon of hope. Their story, passed down through generations, reminds all of the power of courage, compassion, and the human spirit. They became legendary heroes, celebrated for their sacrifice and honored for forging a more just, peaceful universe. And so their tale does not conclude with an ending, but with an invitation to each of us to shape the future of the galaxy, embrace the values of bravery, empathy, and resilience, and join the ongoing legacy of Kaylin, Lyra, and Jax, ensuring that hope's light never dies.